Today's date, everyone.
Bismillah. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له، واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله. اما بعد، فان خير الكلام كلام الله، واحسن هدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الامور محدثاتها الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue this class, 7:38 p.m., Wednesday, February the 9th, 2022, or agrees on the Hijri calendar with the time now, or the date rather, excuse me. The date is the 9th of Rajab, technically Thursday night, the year 1443 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We continue in this beneficial treatise by the great Imam Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. You'll find that we stopped at the statement of the great Imam where we said that Ahlul Sunnah in regards to the names and attributes of Allah Ta'ala are in the middle. As we stop at the statement of the great Imam where he says, فَإِنَّهُ إِذَا قَالَ الْقَائِلُ لَوْ كَانَ اللَّهُ فَوْقَ الْعَرْشِ لَلَزِمَ إِمَّا أَن يَكُونَ أَكْبَرَ مِنَ الْعَرْشِ أو أصغر منه أو مساويا له. وصار مثل هذا أو أصغر أو مساويا، وكل ذلك محال ونحو ذلك من الكلام، فإنه لم يفهم من كون الله على العرش إلا ما يثبت لأي جسم كان على أي جسم كان، وهذا اللازم تابع لهذا المفهوم. أما استواء يليق بجلاله ويختص به فلا يلزمه شيء من اللوازم الباطلة التي يجب نفيها. We start at the statement of the great Imam where he mentioned and said that based upon, you'll find that those who've been misled and misguided by putting their minds and their intellects over the revelation of Allah Ta'ala make these type of statements, such as, you look what the great Imam says. If Allah Ta'ala was above the throne, it would necessitate that He is bigger than the throne, or He's smaller, or equal, meaning equal in its size. And all of that is impossible. He says it's similar to that of statements. For verily they did not understand from Allah being above the arsh except what has been established for any body, meaning the body of a human being. Know any body what it is, and upon any manner of what it is, meaning of the human body. He says that this type of necessitation, or this type of need, he said, verily it follows behind the understanding or what is befitting for something created, meaning the human being or something else created. He says, for as for the ascension, meaning Allah ascended, then it befits His majesty, and it particularizes, and it befits Him. And that does not necessitate anything from those false notions in which it's obligatory for us to remove, meaning that Allah, just because He's above the throne, meaning that He needs it, whereas He sits upon it. He said that's befitting for the creation, not the Lord of the heavens and the earth. So you notice that in their minds, they say Allah sits. What did they fall into? They fell into resemblance. The second step, as we mentioned last class, they negated the characteristic. So that's the only thing in their minds can imagine. Meaning, that's the only thing that their intellects could accept, based upon the fact that they made the intellect the foundation, as we mentioned last class. So now let's go on to say. Let's go on. وصار هذا مثل قول الممثل إذا كان للعالم صانع إذا كان للعالم صانع فإما أن يكون جوهرا أو عرضا وكلاهما محال. So let's go on to read what he said. He says, and this has become similar to the statement of the resembler, meaning those who resemble Allah to creation. Keep in mind, we just gave an example of this. For verily, the people who give the mental capacity or the mind or the intellect as a means of reference, or rather it being a foundation which is relied upon, they say that the ascension of Allah, we don't believe in it, based upon the fact that they think that what it necessitates is that Allah needs it, whereas He sits upon it. Like as we said, that's class for everyone. This is, as we mentioned and said everyone again, this is tamthil. This is resembling Allah to creation. And like we said, as a result, they negated the characteristic of ascension, or they distorted its meaning. So this is what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say. He says, إِذَا كَانَ لِلْعَالَمْ صَانِعٌ. He said, for verily the creation has a صانع. Has a صانع. فإما أن يكون جوهرا أو عرضا. The word al-alam, everyone knows, means creation. The word صانع just means خالق, means creator. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ on the authority of Hudayfa, where the great Imam al-Albani authenticated in his Sahih al-Jami', where you'll find that he mentions in the narration that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَصْنَعُ كُلَّ صَانِعٍ وصنعتها. وفي رواية إن الله صانع كل شيء صانع كل شيء وصنعتها. Verily Allah is the creator of every صانع. Allah Ta'ala is the creator of every فاعل ومفعول. Allah Ta'ala is the creator of every doer. صانع means فاعل, meaning one that does an action, meaning a human being. وَصَنْعَتَهُ, and what he does. The word صَنْعَتَهُ here means his amal, means his actions. So, the hadith here, إِنَّ اللَّهَ صَانِعُ كُلِّ صَانِعٍ. Verily Allah is the Khaliq, the creator of every صانع, meaning every fa'il, every person that does something, and their actions. When we say san'a, when we say that Allah created us and what we do, based upon the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in the human being characteristics. From those characteristics, everyone is qudra, ability. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also created the characteristic of every human being called what? Irada, to intend or to want to do something. Those characteristics are created by Allah and instilled in the human being. Based upon ability and based upon what the creation intends, they do actions. So Allah created those abilities. So not only did He create the human being, but He also created what? His actions. You'll find that is the meaning of the hadith here, where the Messenger of Allah used the word صانع. صانع. صاد, alif, nun, ayn. صانع. صانع is in the narration. إن الله صانع كل شيء. وفي رواية يصنع كل شيء وصنعته. Allah created every صانع. Or rather, Allah is the صانع, He's the خالق. صانع can also mean فاعل. Sani' can also mean someone who does the act, meaning the human being, or animal, or what have you. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them. And their sun'atahu, and what they do, their actions. Why do we say that Allah created us in our actions? Based upon the fact that our actions returns back to characteristics that Allah created in us, such as the will to do something, or intent to do something, which is what they call irada, and qudra, and ability. Based upon those two characteristics that Allah created in the human being, we do actions. For that reason, we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us and what we do. Is it clear, everyone? Right, so let's go back to what Shaykh al-Islam says. And I can read quickly what he also mentioned. Matter of fact, we'll suffice, I don't want to confuse everyone. Right, so it says, وَصَلَ هَذَا مِثْلَ قَوْلِ الْمُمَثِّلِ إِذَا كَانَ لِلْعَالَمِ صَانِعًا. Now listen to what the person who resembles Allah to creation. This is what he says. So this statement right here is from those who've been affected by logic, or affected by the knowledge of rhetoric, which is philosophy and logic, and made the intellect their basis upon the revelation or over the revelation. They say, if there was a creator for the creation, فَإِمَّا أَن يَكُونَ جَوْهَرًا, either he's a jawhar, or he's a arad. What is the word jawhar? Jawhar means مَا يَقُومُ بِنَفْسِهِ, meaning the person or the thing itself carries out what it wants. Meaning مَا يَقُومُ بِنَفْسِهِ, meaning the entity or the thing carries out. Then you have, or it's a arad. Arad here, everyone, the word arad means certain characteristics that needs an entity in order for it to carry out. For example, the characteristic of knowledge. Knowledge doesn't hover in the air by itself. It has to be inside of the human being's or body of the human being, and they don't want to carry out that characteristic. But there's no such thing as a what? Knowledge that just hovers in the air by itself. So, the thing of the human being is the one that carries out the what? The characteristic of what? Knowledge. Otherwise, those affairs don't exist. They don't exist on their own. That's the statement that they're mentioning here. So just keep in mind when I mention it. They said if there was for the creation a sani', a creator, then necessitates he's either a jawhar or he's a arad. We said last class, these words never came in Kitab and Sunnah. Number one, the word jawhar in the Arabic language does not befit to be used in regards to our Lord Ta'ala. Due to the fact that the word jawhar, as we'll talk about later on, necessitates a true meaning and a false meaning. So, and in addition to that, the word arad, same thing. The word arad also is a word that can necessitate either truth or what? Falsehood in regards to Allah. As we said, the origin of Ahl Sunnah is that we do not use these words in regards to Allah. We stick to what came in the book of Allah, the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. All those ayat that you read, that's what we say about Allah. That's the most befitting. And what comes to the authentic Sunnah, what the Messenger of Allah said about the Allah, also was befitting. That is, if one was to preserve statements to speak about Allah Himself without falling into some type of error. To cling to the statements that came in the book of Allah and the authentic Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. These type of words was invented by the people of Kalam. They came with these words in order to cause confusion and to stir up doubt within the Muslims so they can doubt concerning Allah's names and attributes. So that's why Shaykh al-Islam is mentioned in their statements, to let you know some of the doubtful words that they utilize in order to confuse the Muslims. So they use this type of logic, which only agrees with the mind, because keep in mind, like we said, that's their foundation. It's not the revelation. They give precedence to what everyone, the intellect, or the mind. So they say, فَإِمَّا أَن يَكُونَ جَوْهَرًا, that Allah is either jawhar or arab. So you see their mistake from the beginning. They use words that causes confusion. Jawhar, arab. So when they use these logical or philosophical terms, what came as a result of it? Listen to what it mentions. Either the creator is a jawhar or arab, and all of it is impossible. He said, hence, now this is what Shaykh al-Islam was going to say, إِذْ لَا يَعْقَلُ مَوْجُودٍ إِلَّا هَذَا أو قوله, he says, hence, it cannot be understood or comprehended or fathomed or understood in anything that exists except these two things that we mentioned, which is the words Jawhar and Arab. So, number one, you see the mistake. They use two words that are confusing. The word Jawhar and Arab, which is those words that have not come in Kitab and Sunnah, and we said at the same time it can necessitate what do we want? A true meaning and false meaning at the same time. We'll get into the clarification of how these statements can carry false and truth simultaneously in a minute, inshallah, momentarily. It's going to come. But إذا كان مستويا على العرش فهو مماثل لاستواء الإنسان. So, Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, or they say, meaning those who fell into these errors by utilizing their intellects, who are the people that utilize their intellects and minds in regards to Allah? All the deviant sects, from the Jahmiyyah, from the Mu'tazila, from the Kullabiyya, from the Asha'ira, from the Maturidiyya. All of them are considered the deviant sects that utilize the intellect and the mind over the revelation. And that the human mind is the foundation in regards to what dictates what's correct or incorrect in regards to our Lord. So that's the reason why you'll find that they come with these confusing philosophical terms, which as a result of it, causing doubt in regards to the people and their creed towards their Lord. So you see, these type of words are very confusing and disturbing. So they say it necessitates that Allah is a Jawhar or He's a Arab. He says, or they say, if Allah is above the Arsh, he said it necessitates that is similar to the ascension of the human being upon furniture or a chair, or al-falak, or upon the boat, or mounting upon something in general. And they have to sit upon it or recline upon it. Recline upon it in order for them to what? To be above something. So, their minds thinks that the human being's ascension, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ascension above the throne, is similar to what? The ascension of the human being upon, like we said, either a chair or the likes. Is it clear so far what I'm saying, everyone? So, you'll find that to this day, every Muslim that negates that Allah ascends above the throne, above the arsh, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ascended above it, or that Allah is above the creation, they all say this, every single last one of them. If you was to bring anyone from the ahbash, from their masajid, the first thing they would say, why do you negate that Allah is above? I can't accept my Lord sitting on a chair. You'll find that they say that immediately. They say, what do they do? My mind, not giving precedence to the revelation. My mind can only fathom and comprehend something I can't comprehend other than something sitting on a chair. My Lord doesn't sit on a chair. What did they just do? They resemble Allah to creation. And again, what was the second step after that, everyone? They negated it. Or they twisted its meaning, saying that the word ascension means something else. So they say that Allah resembles the ascension of the human being above the sarir, above some furniture or a chair or the likes. He says, hence, it is not known an ascension except like this. He said, فَإِنَّ كِلَاهُمَا مَثَّلَ وَكِلَاهُمَا عَطَّلَ. He said, verily, all of these people fell into the exact same thing, where they both resemble and both of them negated. So they resemble first, then negated what? Second. There's not anything that they do with the characteristics of Allah except that this is exactly what they do. You ask them concerning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, two hands that Allah has affirmed for himself. They would say, no. Because the only thing that comes in their mind is a hand like what? Like a human being. So the first thing they do is resemble the hand of Allah with the hand of the creation. Then second, they what? They either negate it or they distort its meaning by saying it means something else. No, the two bounties of Allah, or the two hands of Allah, means either his two abilities or two bounties, meaning two blessings. They say, no, it doesn't mean two hands. Rather, it means two bounties, or it means two what? Abilities, or two powers. You'll find that they mention that based upon the fact that they what? They resembled Allah to creation, then they negated it second. That's why Shaykh al-Islam is mentioned here. He said, for verily both of them resembled and both of them negated the true reality of what Allah had affirmed and ascribed to himself of those names and attributes. He said the first stood out. If you read the book, now go back to the book. وَامْتَازَ الْأَوَّلُ بِتَعْطِيلِ كُلِّ مُسَمَّى لِلْإِسْتِوَاءِ الْحَقِيقِي وَامْتَازَ الثَّانِي بِإِثْبَاتِ اسْتِوَاءٍ هُوَ مِنْ خَصَائِصِ الْمَخْلُوقِينَ. He said the first one stood out. Meaning the resembler. He said that he stood up. وَامْتَازَ الْأَوَّلُ, rather we'll say the, I'm sorry everyone. وَامْتَازَ الْأَوَّلُ بِتَعْطِيلِ كُلِّ مُسَمَّى لِلْإِسْتِوَاءِ الْحَقِيقِي. That the first one, that he stood out, meaning the negator, by negating everything that Allah Ta'ala had ascribed a true reality of ascension. So they negated it, just totally just said, no. We don't believe in it at all. And then the one who fell into resemblance, that they affirmed an ascension that was from the ascension of a human being and how he does it. Was from his characteristics of that of ascension. So that's what Shaykh al-Islam mentioned and said. You'll find that there's a statement of the Salaf. They used to say a very profound, great statement. That they said that those who resemble Allah to creation, for example, a person that says Allah's hand is like my hand, that's resemblance, it's clear. Allah's face is like my face, that's resemblance, that's clear. Then the people who are what they call mu'attil, the one who negated the characteristics, where they say Allah does not have any of those characteristics. You'll find that the Salaf used to say a profound statement in regards to both groups. He said, Al-Mumathil ya'budu salaman, wal-mu'attilu ya'budu adaman, wal-sunni ya'budu ilahum wahidan, fardan samada. He said the Mumathil worships a statue, and the negator worships non-existence, something that doesn't exist. And the Sunni, the pundit who's upon the Sunnah, worships one deity worthy of worship, who stands out alone, and he is separate and distinct from his creation. So you'll find, this is a profound statement from the Salaf, in order to show how both groups fall into those great errors, based upon what we mentioned. Right, so let's go back to the book and what Shaykh al-Islam mentions. والقول الفاصل هو ما عليه الأمة الوسط من أن الله مستوى على عرشه استواء يليق بجلاله ويختص به، فكما أنه موصوف بأنه بكل شيء عليم وعلى كل شيء قدير وأنه سميع بصير ونحو ذلك، ولا يجوز أن يثبت للعلم والقدرة خصائص الأعراض التي كعلم المخلوقين وقدرتهم، فكذلك هو سبحانه فوق العرش، ولا يثبت لفوقيته خصائص فوقية المخلوق على المخلوق وملزوماتها. نعم، جيد. Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, he said that the distinguishing statement in regards to this, of what's correct, he says, is what the nation, meaning what the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning the Messenger of Allah was upon and the Sahaba. That the correct methodology is what is considered moderation, meaning the moderate approach. When we say moderate approach, meaning of what is considered middle course. Middle course of what he says, the word al-wasat. He says, from that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ascended above the arsh, an ascension that befits His majesty, and it particularizes Him, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is described that He is the most knowledgeable of everything. We're going to talk about this in a minute. That Allah is the most knowledgeable of everything. And He is able to do all things. And He is all hearing and all seeing and anything similar to that. He said, just as it's not permissible for us that we affirm for the knowledge of Allah and the ability of Allah, that we say it's from the khasais al-a'rad. That we say, for example, is from the characteristic of the a'rad. The a'rad meaning those knowledge that happen to come about, which is considered the knowledge of the creation and their ability. We don't resemble the knowledge of the creation similar to the knowledge of Allah, nor do we resemble the ability of the creation with the ability of Allah, even though both of them share in the characteristic, but at the same time there's no resemblance. Due to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge, number one, is complete in every aspect. Number two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is not preceded by ignorance, whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to learn due to the fact that there was a lack of knowledge in a certain affair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not resembling the creation in knowledge due to the fact of what we just mentioned now. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ilm is not incomplete, and it is not preceded by ignorance. In contrast to the creation, His knowledge or her knowledge is preceded by ignorance. They have to learn and become educated. Is he snoring? He says, such as the knowledge of the creation and the qudrah and the ability. He says the knowledge of the creation is deficient. There's no creation that knows everything. No human being knows everything of what's going on in the heavens and the earth and what will happen in the future and the details of everything of what happened in the past. No human being has the knowledge such as the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala. And similar to that is the ability. The ability of Allah does not resemble the ability of the creation, does not resemble the ability of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to do all things. He's able to bring things from non-existence into existence. Allah Ta'ala is able to create of different things and different sizes and shapes, even though they're the same species. Such as the human being has a body. And you'll find that the human body, some of them are short, some of them are tall, some of them are dark, some of them are light, even though they're considered the same species. So Allah Ta'ala is His qudrah, His ability. The human being does not share that ability at all. He says, for verily, he says, if we affirm this, and this is the case, and this is what you'll find that some of the sects that have been affected by ilm al-kalam, they affirm what we just said. He says, if that's the case, what you say about the knowledge of Allah, in regards to the knowledge of the creation, how they're different, and that each befit one another, whereas the knowledge of the creation is incomplete and it is preceded by ignorance, and that we do not affirm that for Allah, where His knowledge is complete and His knowledge is not preceded by what? Ignorance. For those affairs in which you affirm for the knowledge of Allah, why, and you say that each befit one another, why don't you say that about Allah being above the throne? Or that Allah Ta'ala being ascended above the throne? And saying that the ascension of the creation is not like the ascension of the Creator, even though both have the same characteristic, but it does not resemble one another in regards to that particular one. So that's what he's saying. He says, وَسُبْحَانَهُ فَوْقَ الْعَرْشِ وَلَا يَثْبُتُ لِفَوْقِيَتِهِ خَصَائِص فَوْقِيَةِ الْمَخْلُوقِ. He says, if you say this about Allah's knowledge and the knowledge of the creation, and Allah's ability and the creation and the ability of the creation, similar to that, why can't you say the exact same thing about Allah being above the Arsh? He said, whereas the aboveness is not similar to the characteristics, nor the true reality of how the creation is above something where it needs a specific thing in order for it to what? Sit upon. He said, those affairs we say in regards to knowledge and those other characteristics that you affirm, why can't you affirm it for this one? What's the difference? Why do you separate? So those are the affairs you will find that Shaykh al-Islam is mentioned there. So we say that Allah Ta'ala is ascended above the Arsh, similar to what we just said, an ascension that befits His majesty. Whereas this is the middle moderate approach in which Ahlul Sunnah is upon. Whereas we affirm for Allah, for example, the characteristic of ascension that befits Him without resembling that ascension with the ascension of the creation, and at the same time without negating the characteristic. So you'll find that we are exactly in the moderate approach, meaning in the middle, where we did not go to the extremes where we say the ascension of Allah resembles the ascension of the creation, nor do we go to the extremes in the affairs of negation, where the point where we negated it at all, where we don't even affirm it. So Ahlul Sunnah are in the middle, as he mentioned in this example. He said, وَيَخْتَصُّ بِهِ وَلَا يُشَارِكُهُ أَحَدٌ فِي هَذَا الْإِسْتِوَاءِ. He said, for example, the affair of the characteristic of ascension is he is particularized by it, meaning no one ascends similar to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ascends. So those are the affairs that we mentioned. So Shaykh al-Islam, who is he speaking about? When he's saying the knowledge of the creation is not like the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala, he said that this type of al-hiwar, this conversation, or this type of addressment, rather, is to who? Who's he addressing here? He's addressing those from the deviant sects that do affirm some of the characteristics. From them is the Kullabiyya, the Asha'ira, and the Maturidiyya. They affirm some of the characteristics of Allah. The Asha'ira, the Kullabiyya, and the Maturidiyya, they affirm the characteristics of Allah, what they call, what Ahlul Sunnah calls the Sifat al-Dhatiyya, right? However, they call those characteristics something else. They call it Sifat al-Ma'ani. Sifat al-Ma'ani, or they call it As-Sifat al-Aqliya. They call it As-Sifat al-Aqliya. The characteristics that's been affirmed by the mind, or what they call Sifat al-Ma'ani, is the same thing. The characteristics of what the mind affirms, not the revelation. Keep in mind, the foundation that they utilize is not revelation. It's not revelation. The foundation that they use, is not revelation. The foundation that they use is their intellects. So you'll find that the characteristics that they do affirm, they call it Sifat al-Ma'ani, the characteristics that are intellectual, so-called. Or they call it As-Sifat al-Aqliya, Sifat al-aqliya wa Ahl al-Sunnah are as-sifat al-dhatiyya. We call it, Ahl al-Sunnah, as-sifat al-dhatiyya, meaning the characteristics of Allah's essence. However, our foundation is different from their foundation. Our foundation, the revelation, is the foundation. The kitab and the sunnah. And the intellect just complements it in a manner that what? Whereas the mind submits to it. Submits to it. Whereas if one was to reflect in the creation and ponder on the amazing factors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in it, just by looking at the different shapes and sizes. If you look at the sun, if you look at the moon, the sun during the day, you will find by your mind, even though with us it's not the foundation, that there's a creator, there's a khaliq. You can also look at the different shapes and size and look at the fingers, where each one, every human being has 5. Why not 6? Why not 7? Why not 8 for each hand? And that creator has the ilm, he has knowledge of what he's created. By the eyes and the nose and the ears and the hearing and the sight. And that he created it to walk. Based upon those characteristics, your mind can affirm that he's also knowledgeable about what he creates. Those type of characteristics, al-khalq, or knowledge, or those affairs, especially knowledge, say here, knowledge. Knowledge is from the characteristics of Allah's essence that Ahl Sunnah affirms. And the intellect can affirm knowledge of Allah, based upon just you looking at the creation. However, the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala, the knowledge of the creation, by affirming it with their minds, those affairs are not our foundation. Even though at the same time the mind can affirm it. But it's not our foundation. We affirm knowledge of Allah fundamentally based upon revelation, kitab and sunnah. And the human mind comes behind it to what? Min bab al-istithnas, it complements it. Saying that we have kitab, sunnah, and that the human mind complements that. And that the human mind complements that. So, the human mind was made in order to complement and decorate what has been established in the kitab and sunnah. In contrast to the Asha'ira and the ulama of kalam, those who've been affected by knowledge of rhetoric, philosophy, and so-called, utilizing their minds as an intellect, they switched it. They say, no, we affirm that Allah has knowledge, not based upon what Allah and His Messenger says, based upon only that the mind affirms it. And that the kitab and sunnah comes along behind it to complement what the mind affirms. That's where the atrocity and the problem lies. So, what the mind affirms is what's accepted, and what the mind doesn't, even though the kitab and sunnah affirms it, if the mind doesn't accept it, it's rejected. That's the problem of the ulama of kalam. And what Shaykh al-Islam in this context specifically here, he's speaking to the Asha'ira, or he's speaking to the Kullabiyya, and he's speaking to the Maturidiyya. He's speaking to those groups, because they still affirm some of the characteristics of Allah Ta'ala. Not necessarily the Mu'tazila and Jahmiyyah, they negate all of it. But who he's speaking to here is them specifically. So notice Shaykh al-Islam says, or rather I'm just going to re-emphasize what we said. In regards to the Asha'ira, we know the Asha'ira, as we mentioned, said, their minds, making their intellects the foundation, and that the wahy, the revelation, was just used to complement it. Those characteristics of Allah, such as what they call Sifat al-Ma'ani, or Sifat al-Aqliya, for example, what are those characteristics that they affirm? For example, the characteristics that they affirm is knowledge. Knowledge, for example, ability, life, hearing, seeing, right? And also speech. That's what the Ash'ari. You'll find, brothers and sisters, that those characteristics of knowledge, ability, life, hearing, and seeing. For example, they say, the Ash'ari say, or the Maturidiyya, or the Kullabiyya, what they say is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we affirm for him everlasting life, that his life is complete. We also affirm for the human being life. If you was to ask the Ash'ari, don't you affirm life for Allah and life for the creation? They say yes. Do you say now that the life of the Creator resembles the life of the creation? They say no. Do you believe that the life of the creation resembles the life of the Creator? They say no. They say both befits each other. Absolutely. Both befits each other. Meaning, Allah's life befits His majesty, where it's complete in every aspect. He has no beginning, He has no ending, there's no such thing as death in regards to Allah. Allah does not need anything to sustain Himself. Allah does not eat, sleep, or become weary due to absolute perfect life. But you say to the Ash'ari, you say to them, all right, you affirm that for Allah life, right? And those same affairs that you just mentioned of why you believe that Allah's life is complete, does that apply to the creation? Listen to me. Does that apply to the creation? You can't find that. It's not there. It's not in the book. Brothers and sisters, students of knowledge, we didn't study overseas to come and translate. We know this information to teach you. So don't think we're just going based upon a pure shock. We have to have some knowledge of what we're talking about that's not in the explanation. That's the reason why we went overseas. So we're not just come purely, because that's the people of fitna, what they think. They say, all you guys do is just translate. No, it isn't. It's not what we do. Fine. So what we're mentioning in this regard, knowledge, or what we say, we're talking about life. You say to the Ash'ari, the Kullabi, or the Maturidi, life of Allah Ta'ala is complete, you affirm that. Yes. Life of the creation. Does the creation have a beginning? Yes. Does the creation have an ending as far as the human being? Yes. Doesn't the human being need something to sustain itself so it can stay alive? Yes. But yet at the same time, don't you affirm life? Yes. Does the life of both characteristics, meaning of what you affirm for the human being and what you affirm for Allah, different? Yes. So, why can't you affirm that for the ascension of Allah? Oh, no. That doesn't agree with our intellect, doesn't agree. But you just followed what was correct in that characteristic. Why can't you say that about this characteristic? And then you will relieve yourself of the burden of confusion. Due to the fact that he's given all these examples. Same thing in regards to, we give examples of knowledge, we give examples of ability, life, to the end of it. Another affair we can say. Sam'a. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the characteristic of hearing. The human being has the characteristic of what? Hearing. The characteristic of the hearing of the creation is not like the hearing of the Creator. The hearing of the Creator hears everything in the heavens and the earth. And we know that also the human being's hearing is what? Deficient. It only hears to a certain extent. So if you used to ask the Ash'ari or the Kullabi or the Maturidi, you say that the hearing of Allah Ta'ala, you affirm it, right? For Allah? Yes. And that it's different as far as in the hearing of the creation? Yes. Don't you say the hearing of the Creator that befits His majesty without resembling the hearing of the creation? Yes. Okay then. So what's the difference between that in regards to the ascension of Allah? Why can't you say the same thing? Why can't you say that in regards to the hand of Allah? Or the two hands of Allah? Why can't you say the same thing? What's the difference? We say that two hands of Allah is what befits Him, and there are two hands that are complete, whereas at the same time that what? That the two hands of the creation are deficient, where they have a right and a left when it's used for that which is pertaining to something clean and something dirty. You'll find that those affairs are deficient in regards to the what? Creation, perfect in regards to the Creator, whereas those two hands do not resemble the hands of the creation, even though they affirm in the same meaning and the same wording, but at the same time they're both what? Different in their reality, and we did not what? Resemble it with the creation, nor do we negate it. So in regards to those characteristics that you affirm, just as what they call sifat al-aqliya, or sifat al-ma'ani, or those characteristics are called the intellectual characteristics, where you affirm knowledge, ability, life, hearing. Y'all follow the correct methodology of the people of Sunnah. Then in the other ones, you twisted. You went left and debated what was correct, and then you fell into these atrocities and these major mistakes. So that's what Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning here. How is it that you follow Ahl Sunnah was correct here, but you're not following it here? It doesn't make any sense. If you was to apply everything correctly all around the board, you'll find that you come to the same conclusion. So that's what he's trying to establish as an argument. He's saying you established what's correct here, but why don't you establish what's correct here, these characteristics? Why did you differentiate between them? It's all the same. So that's what he's saying there. He said, وَلَمْ يَقُولُوا فِيهَا. He said, in regards to those characteristics of Allah Ta'ala, you didn't say that's an a'rad, or it's just a knowledge that hangs or hovers by itself. You're saying that it's a characteristic of Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carries out. So that's basically what he's summing up. He's saying, why are you distinguishing between all of these based upon the fact of the examples that we gave, that those affairs you followed was correct, but in some affairs you abandoned what was the principle and you fell into these errors. But, so he goes on to say, the thing that we want to establish, like we mentioned here, that we want to enlighten everyone by saying, the foundation of Ahl Sunnah in regards to the names and attributes of Allah is what they call al-dalil al-naqli al-khabari al-sam'i, meaning the evidences that's extracted from Kitab and Sunnah. Well, the foundation of what they affirm, meaning the Asha'ira, the Kullabiyya, the Maturidiyya, is called al-dalil al-aqli. It's called the intellectual evidences and proofs. Except in three characteristics. But when they mention the proofs from the Kitab and Sunnah, keep in mind that they only mention it in order to complement what their minds affirm, not to use it as a foundation. Is it clear, everyone? The Sunnah is the opposite. We use the revelation as its foundation, and if the mind complements it, then it what? Then it complements it. But we don't use it in order for what? For it to dictate upon what Allah and His Messenger says. And what's acceptable to the mind, we accept. And what's not acceptable to the mind, we reject. That's the way of those who've been affected by the people of rhetoric, or the people of philosophy, or the people of logic, such as the Asha'ira, the Maturidiyya, and the Kullabiyya, and the likes of that. Is it clear, everyone? G. What is those three characteristics that these so-called have been affected in? As-Sam' wal-Basar wal-Kalam. We'll talk about that later, inshallah. But that's what we wanted to extract. Right. So that's basically what Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah was using as an argument here. Right. وَاعْلَمْ أَنْ لَيْسَ فِي الْعَقْلِ الصَّرِيحِ. Let's turn the page. He says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنْ لَيْسَ فِي الْعَقْلِ الصَّرِيحِ وَلَا فِي النَّقْلِ الصَّحِيحِ ما يوجب مخالفة الطريقة السلفية أصلا، ولكن هذا الموضع لا يتسع للجواب عن الشبهات الواردة عن الحق، فمن كان في قلبه شبهة وأحب حلها فذلك سهل ميسور وسهل يسير. He says, know for sure that there's nothing in the untampered with mind, meaning the mind that has been saved from these type of mistakes, or saved from these type of corrupt foundations, He said, al-aql as-sarih. When we say al-aql as-sarih, meaning the mind that has not been tampered with, meaning by the outside corruptive ideologies of philosophy and logic and the likes. He says, you'll never find that type of mind, nor will you find in the correct revelation of what necessitates anything that opposes the methodology of the Salaf at all. No Shaykh al-Islam used the word al-tariqat al-salafiyya. No Shaykh al-Islam used the word the methodology of the Salaf. Because people will try to say that word wasn't used in the past. You clearly see Shaykh al-Islam using the word al-tariqat al-salafiyya. You'll find Shaykh al-Islam using it. The Shaykh al-Islam died 728 after the Hijrah. And you'll find that he's using the word al-salafiyya. طيب ويوجب مخالفة الطريقة السلفية أصلا. He said, ولكن هذا الموضع لا يتسع للجواب عن الشبهات. He said, however, this place we're speaking about now, he said it's not enough of time of what we can expound or give details of this answer for those ambiguities or those doubtful matters that has been utilized against the truth. He said, because it's not enough time, and because we want to try to keep the book straight to the point. He said, فَمَنْ كَانَ فِي قَلْبِهِ شُبْهَةٌ. He said, for verily, if a person has a doubtful matter in their heart, and he wants it removed, he's faced up for verily, that's easy. Notice that Shaykh al-Islam, that he said, as we said, the word al-aql as-sarih. The al-aql as-sarih means the human mind that has not been tampered with. That's all it means. وَلَا فِي النَّقْلِ الصَّحِيحِ. The word naql, or naqli, or khabari, or sam'i, just means revelation. It means kitab, and it means whatever you want, sunnah. That's all. Know for sure that the word al-naql as-sahih, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah says in regards to aqidah, it is not a prerequisite or condition that it has to reach the level of tawatur. It's not a prerequisite or condition that has to reach the level of what they call mutawatir. In regards to what we affirm for Allah in His names and His attributes, that it has to reach what they call tawatur or what they call mutawatir. Mutawatir just means that there's an abundance of narrators that narrated the narration. It could be 10, it could be 20, it could be 30, 40 companions. That's reached the level, or it could be 50 or 80 or 90. When it reached those type of numbers of the Sahaba, it's reached the level of tawatur, meaning there was an abundant number of companions that narrated it. That condition is not a prerequisite in what we affirm for Allah. That was a prerequisite of the people who've been affected by kalam, by philosophy and logic. They're the ones that brought those conditions, not us, or not the people of Sunnah. He says, in order for us to utilize as an evidence in this affair of belief, this is incorrect in regards to the Sunnah, and there's no foundation. This is baseless. The only thing that the Ummah used to look at is whether or not the actual narration of the Prophet ﷺ fulfilled the prerequisites of authenticity. That's it. Whether it was in the chain of the narrators or in the text itself. That's it. There was never a prerequisite or condition that it has to reach the level of tawatur. That was something that was newly invented and introduced by the people of kalam. By the people of what? Rhetoric. Or the people that's been affected by logic and philosophy. Is it clear, everyone? The only thing that we are concerned with is whether or not the narration is authentic, and the narrators, and the chain, and the text itself. Whether or not it's been fulfilled all of the conditions of authenticity, or it being sound, or being good. That is what Ahlul Sunnah looks at. Once those affairs have been fulfilled, then we utilize it as a evidence. Whether or not it's reached the level of what they call tawatur, or the affairs of ahad. or the affairs of ahad, where one narrator from the Sahaba narrated it. That's what they mean when they say ahad. Those affairs have not been what? Those affairs was not from the affairs of the Sahaba, that they say, no, we're not, in regards to Allah, it has to reach this level, because if it's ahad, then we don't accept it. You will never find any of the companions of the Messenger of Allah saying that. Rather, you'll find that they used to use one narrator that they knew that was truthful, and use their narrations in the most sacred of affairs, just by one narration. From those affairs is when the month of Ramadan would start, which is the greatest of all worship, in which they used to use one truthful narrator and accept it as news, and they will what? Initiate and start the month of Ramadan. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? You will never find that they used to make distinction between that in affairs of Aqidah as to reach the level of Tawatur, but we'll accept it in the affairs of Ahkam. We'll accept it in the affairs of Fiqh, in the other affairs of the religion, except the most sacred affair, which is Aqidah, then we have to make a distinction. All of that is incorrect. What is correct is, like as we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that we look to whether or not the narration in the authentic Sunnah has been what? Has been authenticated, or it's been sound, based upon the fact that the prerequisites and conditions of the hadith being affirmed has been fulfilled. That's it. But so that's what you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam, that he goes on to say, وَلَا فِي النَّقْلِ الصَّحِيحِ مَا يُوجِبُ مُخَالَفَةَ الطَّرِيقَةِ السَّلَفِيَّةِ أَصْلًا. There's nothing in the revelation that would necessitate it opposing the tariqat al-salafiyya, the methodology of the Salaf at all. Why? Because the Salaf, who are the Sahaba, and those two generations that the Messenger of Allah praised, and those who followed their way after them in perfection, from those ulama and the tabi'een, or those who followed them from the scholars, after those three generations the Messenger of Allah praised, they are the Salaf. But a Salaf, they're the one that took the knowledge directly from the Messenger of Allah, who are the companions. The Aqidah and the legislation, they are the Sahaba. And that's what Shaykh al-Islam is saying. There's nothing in what we're mentioning where he says that the human mind came to oppose the revelation, or it opposes the way of the companions. He said the human mind does not oppose that. Rather it came to submit to the revelation. The human mind came to submit to the revelation so it can be used properly. The human mind came to submit to the revelation in order for it to be used properly. So it can be used in a manner, and it can be used in a way that will benefit the human being. But once the human mind is used as the so-called worship, the so-called deity, where it dictates of what's correct and incorrect in regards to what Allah sent down, and in regards to the revelation, then you made your mind like the deity. Yes, you have. That's why the affairs are extremely dangerous. Yes. You made your mind the deity of worship. Why? Because you're saying, oh Allah, my mind doesn't agree with what you say, so I reject it. My mind does not accept what you say. That's why the human mind, and that's why emotions are all dangerous if you use it as a foundation and a source of guidance to guide you. Your emotions in your mind, if it's not dictated in a manner that submits to the revelation, then it will be always subjected to what? Either being right or wrong. How many times people feel some type of way, and they feel what type of way, and they find out it's correct, incorrect later on. Today you might say, oh, I just trust, I just feel like this is the truth. I feel like Christianity, I just feel so good. When I'm in the church, I feel so good. When I'm someplace, if we was to utilize our minds and our feelings to be the foundation as a source of guidance, majority of us will probably be upon kufr, if not all of us. Meaning, if I was to be based upon the church, I feel good. Well, when I come here, all I see is people looking at me and gritting on me and treating me bad. If a person feels that way, they'll go astray. That's why the origin of the affairs of emotions are like storms. That's why you never make your emotions the what? Foundation, ever. Nor do you make your intellect the foundation. Nor do you make blind following your fathers and your forefathers the foundation. Always make the Kitab and Sunnah the foundation. And that dictates was it correct or correct. How many times did you feel that you trusted someone in your life and you found out that they were treacherous? How many times have us experienced as people in general, I just feel that individual is truthful. I just feel that individual loves me. And then it comes out that wasn't the case. It's happened to a lot of us. It was a lie. They was treacherous. They act like some of them became close to us just to what? Use us. Or they had some type of ulterior motive. They wanted to execute. Those affairs, like we said, of emotions and logic and our minds are not the foundation. Rather, the Kitab and Sunnah dictates those and how to utilize those faculties and those affairs properly. And the mind and your emotions were made to submit to the revelation. So the revelation can guide it in a proper way. Is it clear, everyone? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you can have your emotions. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts boundaries on it. For example, when someone dies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to cry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to have a grieving period where a person can grieve. But Allah gives it a certain time that it's time for you to what? Move on, submit to the qadr, and move on. So your emotions follows behind what? The revelation. So that's the reason why the Kitab al-Sunnah has been what? Revealed. In order for the revelation to guide those faculties, such as our emotions and our minds and our intellects, to be utilized what? Properly. Not the opposite. Our revelation and our minds and our intellects and our emotions was not made to be the dictation over what Allah says or what the Messenger says. Is it clear, everyone? Right, let's put a mark over here. Let's continue tomorrow, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
You saying the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah, they deny everything as opposed to the Ash'ari, right?
Absolutely.
So, to use the argument that you brought from the Shaykh, rahimahullah, about his his knowledge, you can't use that for them, as well as the same argument about life of Allah.
No, because they don't affirm anything. They don't affirm nothing. The Jahmiyyah don't affirm anything, nor the Mu'tazila. But Shaykh al-Islam, in these type of narrations, or these type of books, he's really coming at the Ash'ari, even though he's refuting all of them, the Jahmiyyah and Mu'tazila. Why he used to focus on the Ash'ari? Because that was the fitna during his time. The majority of the Muslims used to think that the Ash'ari or the Maturidiyya, the Ash'ari or the Kullabiyya, they were the ones that were upon the truth, because they affirmed some characteristics. But they weren't. So Shaykh al-Islam used this argument in order to show how they're contradictory. How you say you're Ahl Sunnah, but these characteristics you follow what's correct, and these characteristics you deviate from what's correct. This doesn't make any sense. So that's the argument he used for them. The Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila, you got to come from another angle, because they don't affirm anything. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, that's basically it. Anything else? Shaykh al-Islam, you see that he comes at them from correcting their foundation first. If you notice, he focuses on the foundation, saying why. You'll find that the majority of them, they realize this, that somebody who's been affected by the tariq of the Ash'ari from the Muslims. First, you got to rectify their foundation as a Muslim first. You got to say, do you believe revelation is better or your mind is better? Which one? That's how you got to start off with them. Because you're never going to be able to rectify them unless you start with that foundation first. That's why those people from the Habashis, when one of the youngsters came a couple of months ago, and I was discussing with him. When I was sitting with him and I was trying to rectify why he negate Allah's above to the end of it, I had to rectify his Aqidah first. I had to say, do you believe the mind is the foundation or Allah's revelation? That's what you got to start with. Once you start with that and rectify that, then everything else is easy. Everything else, because you're going to find that the misconceptions and the doubts all emanate from that point right there. They all go back to that point. Once you get that foot corrected, a lot of the other things just fall right into place. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Good. Any other questions? Because we're going to stop. It's getting late. Anything else? طيب وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.
The snow wouldn't bomb you, was it? The snow. Okay.